Paris, July 1793. The French Revolution had already claimed kings, queens, aristocrats, and commoners alike. The guillotine had become a daily spectacle, its blade falling with mechanical precision as blood stained the cobblestones of Paris. Fear, suspicion, and anger hung in the air like a poisonous mist. And then came Charlotte Corday, a young woman from Normandy, quiet in demeanor but burning with conviction. Charlotte carried a mission that would shock France and echo across centuries. She was not a rebel in the streets, not a soldier on the battlefield, but she believed she could change the course of history with a single act. That act would come in the form of a knife, plunged into the heart of one of the Revolution's most powerful men, Jean-Paul Marat. But what drove her? Was she a hero seeking to save France from chaos, or a murderer who mistook bloodshed for salvation? Tonight, we begin her story. Charlotte Corday was born in 1768 in Normandy. Unlike many women of her time, she had access to education. Raised partly in a convent, she was exposed to philosophy, literature, and the ideals of the Enlightenment. She read the works of Rousseau and Plutarch, absorbing ideas about freedom, virtue, and civic duty. But France was a nation on fire. The Revolution, which began with the promise of liberty and equality, soon descended into violence. The monarchy fell. Streets ran red with executions. Radical leaders like Robespierre and Marat called for even more blood. Charlotte, watching from afar, grew horrified. She sympathized with the Girondins, a moderate faction that opposed the radical Jacobins who now dominated Paris. The Girondins sought a more balanced revolution, one that preserved order while reforming society. But the Jacobins branded them as traitors, and many were executed. Charlotte believed the heart of the terror beat inside Marat himself, and she began to form a plan. Jean-Paul Marat was no ordinary revolutionary. Sickly and often confined to his bath because of a painful skin disease, he nevertheless wielded enormous influence through his fiery newspaper, L'Ami du Peuple, the friend of the people. From his bathtub, Marat called for executions, denouncing enemies of the people with names and accusations. His words were powerful enough to send hundreds to the guillotine. To his followers, he was a prophet of justice. To his enemies, he was a bloodthirsty tyrant. Charlotte read his writings with growing disgust. To her, Marat was not saving France, he was destroying it. His pen had become a weapon sharper than any blade. And in her mind, the only way to silence him was through death. The revolution was spinning out of control, and Charlotte believed she was the one chosen to stop it. Charlotte's decision to kill Marat was not impulsive. She wrestled with the morality of it. She was religious, thoughtful, not a natural killer. But as she saw the Girondins destroyed, their leaders hunted and executed, she concluded that one death could save thousands. She compared herself to figures from history, those who struck down tyrants to protect liberty. She believed her act would end the terror and give France back to the people. In her eyes, it was not murder. It was sacrifice. And so, in July 1793, Charlotte left her home in Caen and traveled to Paris. She carried nothing suspicious, just determination, a plan, and the conviction that fate was guiding her hand. When Charlotte arrived in Paris, the city was drowning in paranoia. The guillotine stood in the heart of the capital, its blade constantly at work. Citizens turned on neighbors. Whispers could lead to arrests. For Charlotte, the city felt like enemy territory. She was a woman alone, walking into the lion's den. But she carried herself with calm resolve. She purchased a kitchen knife, small enough to conceal but sharp enough to pierce flesh. It was a simple tool, ordinary and unremarkable, yet destined to change history. Charlotte wrote letters to her family, knowing she might never return. She did not beg forgiveness. She justified her act as noble, even necessary. Her words reveal no fear, only certainty. Charlotte's first attempt to reach Marat failed. She approached his residence, requesting to see him, but was turned away by guards. She returned again the next day, determined not to leave Paris without fulfilling her mission. Marat was difficult to reach, sick, paranoid, surrounded by supporters. But Charlotte's persistence paid off. She claimed to have information about Girondin conspirators, a lure Marat could not resist. That lie opened the door to history. On July 13, 1793, Charlotte Corday was finally admitted into Marat's home. The scene was strange. Marat, soaking in a medicinal bath, covered by a cloth, writing names for execution on a wooden board balanced across the tub. His condition kept him submerged, but his mind was as sharp as ever. Charlotte stood before him, calm but determined. She handed him a list of names, fabricated to catch his attention. As he read, he assured her that those named would soon meet justice. Those words sealed his fate. Charlotte pulled the knife from her dress and plunged it into his chest. The blade pierced his lung and heart. Marat gasped, cried out, and collapsed in his bath. His blood spilled into the water, staining it red. Within moments, the voice of the revolution was silenced. Chaos erupted. Marat's companion screamed. Neighbors rushed in. Charlotte did not flee. She did not resist. She calmly declared, "I killed one man to save 100,000. The authorities seized her, but she showed no fear. She did not beg for mercy or deny her actions. She admitted everything, fully aware of what awaited her: trial, condemnation, and death by guillotine. But Charlotte was not ashamed. She believed she had struck for liberty, not out of hatred. Her composure shocked many. How could such a young, quiet woman commit such an act with such calm? Charlotte Corday's trial was swift. The court, dominated by the Jacobins, had no intention of granting her leniency. She was charged with murder and treason. But Charlotte used the trial as her stage. She spoke eloquently, explaining her motives. She argued she had killed a tyrant for the good of France. She did not beg for her life. Instead, she defended her actions with the dignity of someone who believed she had done right. Her words left a mark. Even some who condemned her admitted she carried herself with remarkable courage. But the verdict was inevitable. She was sentenced to death by guillotine. On July 17, 1793, just 4 days after killing Marat, Charlotte Corday was led to the scaffold. Dressed in a red blouse, the garment reserved for murderers, she walked with dignity, her head held high. Crowds gathered to see the Angel of Assassination, as some called her. Many expected fear, tears, or regret. Instead, Charlotte radiated calm. Witnesses described her as serene, almost saint-like, even as the guillotine loomed. Her final words remain debated, but one report has her declaring, "I killed one man to save 100,000. The blade fell, and Charlotte Corday's life ended at just 24 years old. But her act lived on, immortalized in paintings, writings, and debates that continue centuries later. Was she a heroine of liberty, or a misguided murderer? The question still haunts history. Marat's death sent shockwaves through revolutionary Paris. For his followers, he became a martyr instantly. His blooded bath became a symbol, his death painted as a sacrifice for the people. The Jacobins seized the moment, turning Charlotte's act into propaganda. The funeral was staged with great ceremony. His body lay in state, draped in revolutionary flags. Citizens lined up to pay respects, some even dipping cloths in his blood as relics. Paintings soon depicted Marat as a saint of the revolution, immortalized most famously by Louis David. Charlotte's intended goal, to stop the bloodshed, had failed. Instead, Marat's death fueled more vengeance, more suspicion, and more executions. The revolution's spiral into terror only deepened. Who was Charlotte Corday, really? Beyond the act that defined her, she was a complex young woman shaped by her times. Raised in the quiet countryside, she lost her mother early and found refuge in the convent where books became her companions. She was not violent by nature. Friends described her as gentle, calm, and intelligent. But Charlotte believed in personal responsibility to history. She was inspired by Roman stories of tyrant killers, by the Girondins' ideals of moderation. In her writings, she did not sound like a fanatic. She sounded like a philosopher who believed her death was the price of her convictions. This paradox, gentle woman, yet assassin, captivated the world then and still does now. Charlotte's dagger was meant to kill one man. Instead, it gave life to a movement. The Jacobins used Marat's death to rally support, casting him as a martyr killed by a counter-revolutionary. The Girondins, already weakened, faced even more pressure. The terror intensified. Thousands more went to the guillotine in the months that followed. Ironically, Charlotte's act strengthened the very forces she hoped to weaken. Her vision of saving France backfired, unleashing even more violence. History is cruel that way. Her sacrifice was real, but her outcome was tragic. Charlotte Corday's image spread quickly. Newspapers and pamphlets painted her as either a villain or a heroine. To her enemies, she was a monster, a woman who dared strike down one of the revolution's greatest voices. To others, she was brave, a lone figure who defied tyranny. Artists depicted her as serene at the guillotine, as if she had transcended fear. Writers called her the Angel of Assassination, turning her into a symbol of courage mixed with tragedy. But beyond the legends and images was still a real young woman, flesh and blood, who believed deeply enough in an idea to give her life for it. Charlotte Corday's act also shocked France because of one simple fact: she was a woman. In a time when women were expected to remain silent in politics, her crime was almost unthinkable. Many asked, how could a woman, supposedly gentle, nurturing, commit such a bold and bloody act? Some saw her as proof that women were dangerous if given too much freedom. Others saw her as a feminist icon ahead of her time, refusing to remain in the shadows of history. Charlotte herself rejected the idea that gender mattered. She insisted she acted not as a woman, but as a citizen of France. Still, her act forced the revolution, and the world, to confront the power of women in politics and violence. Surviving trial records give us a glimpse of Charlotte's composure. Question after question, she answered directly, with calm confidence. Why did you kill Marat? I killed one man to save 100,000. Did anyone help you? No. I alone conceived and carried out the act. Do you regret it? No. I believed it necessary. Her words were recorded with astonishment. She admitted everything, refusing to hide behind lies. Even her accusers remarked on her clarity of thought. Few killers in history have faced judgment with such serene defiance. One chilling detail comes from after Charlotte's beheading. The story goes that the executioner's assistant lifted her head and slapped her cheek, a grotesque gesture meant to test if life lingered for a moment after death. Witnesses swore they saw her face flush, as if in anger or humiliation, even after decapitation. Science may explain it as muscle movement, but at the time, it only deepened the myth of Charlotte Corday. That image, her head alive with defiance even after death, cemented her as a legend of resistance, whether true or not. Over the centuries, Charlotte Corday has been remembered in many ways. To some, she was a misguided murderer whose act worsened France's suffering. To others, she was a principled assassin, a martyr for liberty who stood against tyranny. Playwrights, poets, and historians have returned to her story again and again. She remains one of the revolution's most haunting figures, not because she ruled, but because she chose to kill. Her act asks us, when does murder become justice? When does conviction become fanaticism? There are no easy answers, which is why Charlotte's story continues to resonate. Charlotte Corday's story is more than history, it's a mirror. She reminds us how powerful one individual can be, for good or for ill. She shows how conviction can drive ordinary people to extraordinary acts, even acts of violence. And she warns us how quickly noble intentions can be swallowed by tragic consequences. She believed she was saving France. Instead, her act fueled more bloodshed. She believed she was ending terror. Instead, she became part of it. Charlotte's dagger teaches us about the double-edged nature of idealism. Charlotte Corday walked into Marat's bath with a knife and into history with a single strike. Her execution did not erase her name, it immortalized it. To this day, she divides opinion. Was she a villain or a heroine, a murderer or a martyr? The answer depends on how we view justice, morality, and the cost of revolution. But beyond the labels, Charlotte was a human being, young, intelligent, and deeply convinced she was doing right. Her tragedy is that history rarely rewards purity of intention. And now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Charlotte Corday was a hero who tried to save France, or a misguided killer who only brought more suffering? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like this video if Charlotte's story made you reflect, and subscribe to True Crime Hub for more deep dives into history's darkest and most haunting cases. Because sometimes, the line between justice and murder is thinner than we dare to admit.